When Ethan stepped off the shuttle and onto the silver floors of the Tralven Academy, his heart beat faster than ever before. The air smelled different here, clean, cold, almost electric. The sky outside the dome shimmered in colors his human eyes could barely describe. For a moment he forgot about fear and just stood there amazed. Humanity had dreamed of reaching the stars, and now he was living that dream. He was the first human student to ever study at this alien academy, but wonder soon faded into silence. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him, big, curious, glowing eyes. Some were friendly, others not so much. Whispers drifted behind him in languages he didn't fully recognize, or at least they thought he didn't recognize. Ethan carried his small bag closer to his chest and tried to smile at a few students. Most didn't smile back. He wasn't surprised. Humans were new to the Galactic Alliance, still seen as the young species. Many believed Earth's people were too emotional, too unpredictable, too primitive. Ethan knew that, but he had come to prove them wrong. His first day in class was quiet. The room was shaped like a crescent, with floating glass tablets and seats that hovered slightly above the floor. The teacher, an old insectoid being named Professor Kyle, welcomed him kindly, but the rest of the class stayed silent, watching him as if he were part of some strange experiment. And then he saw them, the twins. They were impossible to miss. Two tall, elegant girls with silver blue skin and long hair that shimmered like starlight. Their eyes were bright and alive, reflecting the light like quicksilver. They moved together, always side by side, almost identical except for the faint scar that curved along Syrah's left cheek. Their names were Lyra and Syrah, daughters of a respected Andral diplomat. When Ethan entered, they exchanged glances, and then soft laughter followed. He couldn't understand what they said, at least not openly. Their voices were musical, their tone playful, but their words carried something else beneath. Mockery. So fragile, one said in Andrelian. So small, the other replied. Ethan didn't react. He just sat down in the back row, placed his datapad on the desk, and looked straight ahead. He had learned long ago that sometimes silence was stronger than words. He understood every single thing they said. It wasn't just Andrelian. Before coming to Tralven, Ethan had spent 3 years learning alien languages, in secret. He wasn't just a student of science. He was obsessed with communication. He had memorized thousands of alien symbols, studied recordings, and practiced with voice modulators until he could mimic the soft glides and tones of alien speech. To him, language was more than sound. It was the heart of every species. But here, he stayed quiet. It wasn't the time to show what he could do. Days passed and the teasing continued. Lyra and Syrah would whisper to each other when he walked by, their voices light and mocking. They called him Little Terran or Groundborn. Sometimes they pretended to help him but spoke about him as if he wasn't there. They would smile sweetly when he looked their way, hiding the laughter in their eyes, and every time Ethan said nothing. He listened. He learned. He stored their words carefully, not out of anger, but out of understanding. Because beneath their teasing, he sensed something else: curiosity. The twins weren't cruel because they hated him. They were cruel because they didn't understand him. They didn't believe a human could ever be their equal. Still, it hurt. He was alone among hundreds. His own kind was light years away, and all he had were the cold stars and the sound of laughter that wasn't kind. But Ethan had patience. He had come from a world where humans had faced far worse. He had grown up hearing stories of people mocked, doubted, underestimated, and how they proved themselves again and again. So he smiled quietly and let them talk. Because one day he knew he would speak, and when he did, they would finally listen. That thought was enough to keep him going. The first week at Tralven Academy passed slowly for Ethan. Every day was a new challenge, not only because of the advanced alien technology or the strange curriculum, but because of the constant whispers and glances from his classmates. They were polite enough in front of teachers, but behind closed doors he was the subject of endless jokes. And no one teased him more than the twin sisters Lyra and Syrah. They had discovered very quickly that Ethan didn't speak their language fluently, or at least they assumed so. That assumption made them bolder. They whispered just loud enough for him to hear, but soft enough that others wouldn't notice. Their voices were melodic and light like wind chimes, but their words carried sharp edges. The human is so slow. Look at him struggle with the basics. Do you think he even knows what we are saying? Every time Ethan kept his expression neutral. Inside, his stomach twisted, but he reminded himself patience. Patience and observation were his allies. He had learned long ago that rushing to prove himself only gave others more ammunition to mock. Because Ethan knew a secret. Before leaving Earth, he had spent years studying alien languages in private. He had watched videos, listened to recordings, and practiced speech patterns late into the night. Andrelian, the language the twins spoke, was one of his favorites. Its tone soft but sharp, flowing like water yet precise. He could understand every nuance of it, every joke, every hidden insult. The twins didn't know that. They thought they were speaking in a secret code. Ethan often wondered why they were so cruel. Not all aliens were like that, but Lyra and Sierra seemed to enjoy their little game. Sometimes he imagined what it would be like to respond, to turn their teasing back on them. But he didn't, not yet. He wanted them to underestimate him, to keep thinking he was just a fragile human. One afternoon, as the twins passed by his desk, they leaned close and whispered in perfect Andrelian. Maybe we should give him a small task? Something easy so he doesn't embarrass himself. Ethan's lips curved into a small, almost invisible smile. He knew exactly what they were saying, and inside a quiet fire of determination started to burn. He would wait. He would listen. He would remember everything. After class, he sat alone in the corner of the library, surrounded by floating holographic books. The twins occasionally walked by, glancing at him with faint curiosity, their silver eyes reflecting both mischief and wonder. They didn't understand yet that humans could learn. They didn't understand that humans could adapt faster than they expected, absorbing languages, customs, and ideas like sponges. Ethan opened his datapad and began practicing his Andrelian aloud, softly so no one could hear. He mimicked the exact tones and rhythms of the twins' speech. Each word felt like a key, unlocking a door into their world. It wasn't just about understanding them. It was about showing them that humans were not to be underestimated. Even in moments of loneliness, he reminded himself of why he was here. Earth had been small, fragile, and often overlooked in the grand galaxy. Humans had been mocked and doubted for centuries, but Ethan carried that resilience with him, and in a strange, distant place among alien students, he felt the same spark he felt when he was a child, listening to tales of human heroes who had risen despite impossible odds. The twins' laughter echoed from the hall outside, and he felt a mix of anger and amusement. They didn't know him. They didn't know that their words had no real power over him. Ethan leaned back, letting out a deep breath. He repeated silently to himself, "One day they will see. One day they will understand. And when I speak, they will freeze." And for the first time since arriving at Tralven Academy, he didn't feel small anymore. He felt like a seed ready to grow, quiet now but unstoppable when the time came. The days grew longer and the whispers followed Ethan everywhere. Lyra and Sierra had made it their mission to make him feel small, to remind him that he was different, fragile, a newcomer in a world that didn't yet trust humans. It wasn't outright cruelty, more like a game for them, a constant challenge to see how far they could push him. During lessons, they would lean toward each other, speaking in Andrelian just loud enough for him to hear. "Look at him. He's trying so hard. It's almost cute. Do you think he even understands what we're saying?" Ethan's chest tightened every time. A small part of him wanted to lash out, to expose the truth that he understood every word, but he held himself back, not because he was afraid, but because he knew the timing had to be perfect. Patience was a weapon, and he intended to use it. Outside the classroom, the twins' teasing didn't stop. They would walk beside him in the hall, laughing quietly at their own jokes. Other students would watch, unsure whether to intervene or join in. Ethan learned to move through the crowd with careful steps, keeping his head high while silently cataloging every word. Every glance, every slight, it was exhausting, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically. Yet there was something fascinating about the twins. Their energy, their grace, the way they moved in perfect harmony, it was mesmerizing even as they tormented him. They weren't cruel because they hated him. They were cruel because they didn't know how to respect someone so different, someone they had decided was weak without even trying to understand. One day during a practical exercise, the teasing reached a new level. The students were assigned to demonstrate their skills in manipulating energy crystals. Ethan struggled at first, fumbling with the unfamiliar technology, while the twins floated effortlessly through their tasks. Lyra's melodic voice floated across the room. "Oh, look at him." He almost dropped it. "Humans are so clumsy," Sira giggled, her silver eyes sparkling. "Maybe he should just observe instead." "It's safer for him," Ethan forced a calm smile. He didn't reply. But inside, a storm was building. He could feel every word like a small cut, but he also felt something stronger. A quiet confidence. A knowledge that he was learning too. And learning faster than they realized. After the exercise, he retreated to the quiet of the library. The twins' laughter still echoed faintly, but here, surrounded by floating holograms and alien scripts, he felt safe. He practiced his Andrillian again, softly, murmuring the same words they had used to mock him. He repeated their tones, matched their rhythms until he could speak as naturally as any Andrillian native. It was more than practice. It was preparation. He wasn't just learning a language, he was learning power. He was learning the moment when the quiet, underestimated human could rise and be heard. That evening, as he walked back to his quarters, he passed the twins in the hall. Lyra leaned slightly toward Sira and whispered, not knowing he understood, "Do you think he's even capable of understanding us fully?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. He only nodded politely, walking past them. The twins froze for a moment, sensing his calmness, but they didn't know what it meant. They didn't know that his silence was not fear, but strategy. Inside his room, Ethan collapsed onto his bed, exhausted. He thought about Earth, about the people who had doubted him there, about every moment in his life when someone had assumed he couldn't do something. And he felt a surge of determination. He would wait. He would endure. He would let them continue their teasing, their whispers, their laughter, because one day he would speak, and when that day came, Lyra and Sira would realize that the little human they had mocked for weeks had understood everything, and they would freeze. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the weight of the day settle. The twins didn't know him yet. They didn't know the depth of human determination, but that was about to change. The day of the Academy's open presentation arrived with a strange mix of excitement and dread. The hall was enormous, with high ceilings that reflected light in soft rainbow patterns, and hundreds of students and teachers were already taking their seats. Ethan felt his heart thumping loudly, echoing in his chest. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to show the galaxy, and especially the twins, that humans were not to be underestimated. Lyra and Sira were seated together near the front, glowing subtly under the light of the hall. Their silver-blue skin shimmered, and their eyes followed him the moment he entered. They smiled. The same confident, playful smile he had grown to recognize over the past weeks. But he noticed a small flicker of something different in their gaze, something he couldn't quite place. Perhaps it was curiosity, perhaps unease. The presentations began. One by one, students spoke in their native tongues, translating into Galactic Common with holographic aids. Their words painted vivid stories of distant planets, ancient civilizations, and personal journeys. When the twins presented, their voices were mesmerizing, full of rhythm and grace. Ethan listened quietly, absorbing every detail, his hands tightening slightly around his notes. Finally, it was his turn. His legs felt heavy as he walked to the front. The crowd's murmurs buzzed in his ears, a mixture of curiosity and expectation. Lyra and Sira's eyes followed him, glimmering with quiet amusement. Ethan could almost hear their thoughts. What will this human say? Will he even make sense? He stepped up to the podium, took a deep breath, and did something that stunned everyone. He turned off the universal translator. A hush fell over the hall. Students whispered to each other, puzzled. The professors raised their eyebrows, curious but silent. The twins froze, their smiles faltering for the first time. Ethan's voice rang out, clear, calm, and perfect, speaking in fluent Andrillian, the twins' native language. Every tone, every inflection was precise, effortless, and full of emotion. On Earth, we were once divided. We fought over borders, over beliefs, over fear of the unknown. We made mistakes, hurt each other, and doubted one another. But we learned that understanding is stronger than ignorance, and empathy is more powerful than fear. That is why I am here. Not to be your curiosity, not to be your joke, but to learn from you and to share what humans can offer. The silence was complete. Even the floating holograms seemed to pause mid-animation, as if waiting for more. Lyra's mouth dropped slightly and Sierra blinked rapidly, unable to process the words that were spoken so flawlessly. Their eyes darted toward each other, shock mirrored in both. Ethan continued, turning slightly toward the twins, his gaze steady. "And yes, I understood every word you said about me from the very first day. Every whisper, every laugh, every secret remark." The hall seemed to hold its breath. No one moved. No one spoke. The twins' proud expressions had vanished completely, replaced by disbelief and something close to fear. They had underestimated him, and in that moment the truth hit harder than anything he could have imagined. Ethan felt a calm satisfaction, a quiet victory. He wasn't showing anger, not exactly. He was showing what humans could do when pushed, when underestimated, when challenged. He had waited patiently, endured the teasing, and now, in this perfect moment, he had proven that patience and determination were far more powerful than mockery. He finished his speech with a soft, steady tone, and then stepped back. The silence lingered for a heartbeat longer, then broke into applause, polite at first, then loud, thunderous, and sincere. The twins remained frozen, their earlier confidence shattered. For the first time since arriving at Tralven Academy, Ethan felt seen, not just as a human, but as someone who belonged, who could stand equally among the stars, and the twins would never forget this day. The applause filled the hall like a tidal wave, but in the middle of it all, Lyra and Sierra were frozen. Their eyes were wide, mouths slightly open, and their hands gripped the edges of their chairs. Every confidence they had carried into the room had disappeared in an instant. Ethan's words, in their own language, had cut through the illusion they had built. For a long moment, no one spoke. The crowd's murmurs faded into silence as everyone stared at the human who had just challenged centuries of assumptions. Professors blinked, students whispered, and holographic displays shimmered uncertainly. But Ethan remained calm, standing tall, his voice no longer echoing through the hall but still resonating in the memory of every listener. Lyra shifted slightly, her silver-blue hair catching the light. She looked at Sierra, who shook her head subtly as if trying to understand what had just happened. Both of them had underestimated the human, and now they faced the reality that they had been wrong. Ethan stepped down from the podium, feeling a strange mix of relief and pride. Relief because the weight of his patience had finally borne fruit, and pride because he had proven, without anger, that humans were capable of much more than anyone had assumed. Later, in the quiet of the hall after the audience had dispersed, Lyra and Sierra approached him. They moved slowly, their usual grace slightly muted as though they were walking on fragile glass. Their eyes avoided his, flicking to the floor, then back up, searching for a clue about who this human really was. Finally, Sierra spoke, her voice soft, hesitant. We didn't know you could speak so perfectly. We didn't know you understood everything." Ethan looked at them calmly, his lips curving into a faint smile. "I understood from the first day. Every word, every whisper. I just waited for the right moment to show you." Lyra's eyes glistened slightly, a mix of embarrassment and awe. She lowered her gaze and murmured, "We were cruel to you. We didn't think, we just laughed." "I'm sorry." Ethan shook his head gently. "You don't need to apologize. It's part of learning for both of us. But next time, don't underestimate anyone, even someone small, even someone quiet." The twins nodded slowly, absorbing his words. For the first time, their expressions were humble, almost human in their softness. The arrogance that had defined them for weeks was gone, replaced with something new: respect. In the following days, a subtle change swept through the academy. The twins no longer whispered or laughed at him. Instead, they began asking questions about Earth, about humans, about how he had learned their language so well. Their curiosity was genuine, not mocking. Lyra even smiled at him once softly, without the previous undertone of superiority. Ethan noticed the change, but he didn't gloat. His victory wasn't in making them feel small. It was in proving that humans could be patient, resilient, and capable of understanding even when underestimated. Late one evening, the twins joined him in the library. They sat quietly side by side and watched him work on his notes. Sierra finally spoke, her voice soft and sincere. You humans, you are different. Not just because of your strength, but because you endure and you wait. Ethan smiled faintly, his heart warmed by her words. Sometimes waiting is the only way to show what we can really do. Lyra nodded, her usual confidence replaced by thoughtfulness. I think we have a lot to learn from you. For Ethan, that moment was more than a victory. It was a connection, fragile, new, and powerful. The twins who had teased him, laughed at him, and assumed he was weak were beginning to understand that humans were not the species to dismiss. And deep inside, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries, but now in this quiet hall on Tralven, he had taken the first step in changing that perception, not with violence or anger, but with patience, understanding, and the courage to speak when the moment was right. The twins looked at him again, their silver eyes softening, and for the first time Ethan felt he was no longer alone. He had been tested, teased, and doubted, and he had proven quietly and brilliantly that humans could rise above it all. After the presentation, life at Tralven Academy changed for Ethan, though not all at once. The teasing had stopped, but the quiet respect he had earned from the twins and other students slowly began to ripple through the academy. Every glance he received now carried curiosity rather than judgment. Whispers about him continued, but they were different, intrigued, not mocking. Lyra and Sira, the twin sisters, had stopped moving as one, perfectly in sync to tease and intimidate. Now they watched him separately, trying to process the reality that the human they had laughed at for weeks had not only understood them, but outshone expectations with dignity and skill. It started small. Lyra approached him in the courtyard one morning while the sun cast faint colors across the domed sky. She stood a little awkwardly, not her usual confident self, and said softly in Andrelian, We didn't think you could do what you did yesterday. I thought humans were limited. Ethan smiled, keeping his voice gentle. Limits are often just what others believe. They don't define what someone can achieve. Sira appeared beside her, nodding, her eyes bright and serious. We underestimated you. That was our mistake, and we want to understand. For the first time, Ethan realized that the twins' cruelty had not come from malice but ignorance. They had never seen a human in their world, had never experienced someone so small, so different, who could hold patience as firmly as strength. And now they wanted to learn. Over the next few days, the twins began to sit with him in the library. They asked questions about Earth, about humans, and about how he had mastered Andrelian. Their curiosity was honest, their tone without mockery. Ethan taught them words, corrected pronunciations, and shared stories of human perseverance. Slowly, laughter returned, but this time it was warm, genuine, free from judgment. One evening, after hours of studying together, Sira looked at him with a quiet smile. You are strange, Ethan. Humans are strange, but in a good way. Ethan chuckled softly. We do tend to surprise people. That's kind of our thing. Lyra laughed lightly, the sound soft and musical. I thought humans were weak. I thought we were stronger. But you have strength too. Not the strength of your body, but of your mind and heart. Ethan's chest warmed at her words. All the teasing, all the lonely moments in the academy, all the whispered doubts, it had led to this. Respect, understanding, connection. In the following weeks, the academy felt different. Students who had once ignored him or treated him as an outsider began to approach, asking questions, seeking collaboration, or simply inviting him to sit with them. Lyra and Sira were often by his side, sharing tasks, practicing new languages, or quietly exchanging observations about other students. Through all of this, Ethan realized something important. Patience was more than enduring cruelty. Patience was about letting others see the truth of your strength in their own time. Humans had always been underestimated, and on Earth, in the galaxy, everywhere. But with calm understanding and courage, that perception could change. One late night, the twins accompanied him as he walked back to his quarters. They walked in silence for a while, then Sira spoke quietly but sincerely. You've changed how we see humans, how we see the world. Thank you. Ethan smiled, a soft, satisfied smile. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it to show what humans can be, but I'm glad you understand. Lyra glanced at him, a quiet admiration in her eyes. We have a lot to learn from you, and maybe we want to keep learning. Ethan realized then that this was more than acceptance. It was connection, mutual respect, something far deeper than winning an argument or silencing mockery. He had not only endured, he had built bridges, formed bonds, and opened minds. And in that quiet walk through the shimmering corridors of Tralven Academy, Ethan understood something fundamental. Humanity's strength was not in power alone. It was in patience, understanding, courage, and the ability to turn doubt into respect. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt truly at home among beings who had once underestimated him and who now saw his worth. Weeks passed after the presentation, and life at Tralven Academy had changed in subtle but profound ways. Ethan was no longer the quiet human in the corner, feared or underestimated. He had become someone others observed with respect, not because he was stronger or faster, but because he had shown patience, intelligence, and courage. The twins, Lyra and Sira, were no longer the ones who whispered cruel words. Instead, they walked beside him, sometimes in synchronized grace, sometimes individually, their curiosity about him and his world shining in their silver eyes. They asked questions, learned from him, laughed with him, not at him, and slowly a bond formed that transcended species, culture, and expectation. One evening, as the soft moons of Tralven cast pale light across the Academy's reflective floors, the three of them sat together in the library. Holographic displays floated above, shimmering softly, and the air was quiet except for the faint hum of alien energy. Lyra looked at Ethan, her voice unusually gentle. "You are different, Ethan. Not just because of your skills, but because of your patience. We never expected a human to be so enduring." Ethan smiled faintly, feeling the weight of their words. Endurance is what humans do when no one believes in them. We wait, we learn, and we act when the time is right. Sira nodded thoughtfully, her long fingers brushing a holographic image of Earth that Ethan had conjured for them. "You've taught us more than we realized, not just about language or about humans, but about understanding, about respect." For the first time since arriving at the Academy, Ethan felt truly seen. The teasing, the loneliness, the doubts, no, they had led to this moment, this understanding. He realized that the patience he had exercised was more than a strategy. It was a reflection of humanity itself. Lyra leaned closer, a shy, almost hesitant smile on her face. "We thought humans were weak, small, and limited, but you've shown us that we were wrong." Completely wrong. Ethan's chest swelled with quiet pride, but he did not boast. Instead, he said softly, "Humans may be underestimated often, but that doesn't define us. What matters is what we do with the chance we're given." Sira's voice, filled with sincerity, broke the quiet. "You've changed how we see the world. And ourselves. Thank you." Ethan's eyes met theirs, and he felt a deep connection. Not just respect, but trust, friendship, and something more profound. He realized that humans were not only capable of surviving in the galaxy, but capable of inspiring change, even in the most unlikely of places. Over the next months, the twins continued to learn from him. Together, they explored the complexities of human and alien interaction, sharing stories of Earth, of Tralven, and of the galaxy beyond. Other students watched in awe, seeing that the human had earned not only respect but affection. Ethan's quiet strength had shifted perceptions, turning skepticism into admiration. One afternoon, as the three walked through the courtyard, Lyra glanced at Ethan, her voice soft and teasing in the way it had once been, but without cruelty. "You really are strange." "Ethan, strange in the best way," he laughed. A low, warm sound, maybe that's what humans do. "We surprise people when they least expect it." Sira smiled, her hand brushing lightly against his arm, a gesture of friendship and trust. "We've learned from you. And maybe we've grown because of you." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with pride. It was connection, understanding, the kind that could span stars, species, and worlds. He realized that humans were often underestimated not because they were weak, but because others failed to see their patience, their resilience, and their courage. In that moment, under the soft glow of Tralven's moons, Ethan understood something fundamental. The galaxy might doubt humans, laugh at them, or even fear them. But when humans spoke, acted, and endured, the universe listened, and the twin sisters who had once mocked him without mercy were proof of that lesson. They had seen him quietly, patiently, And now they had learned. Ethan smiled, looking at the twins. We don't need to be loud to be strong. Sometimes speaking once, at the right time, is enough to change everything. Lyra and Sierra exchanged glances, their eyes soft and full of respect. They nodded, silently acknowledging the truth of his words, and as the stars shimmered above the Tralven Academy, Ethan walked on, knowing that humans, patient and enduring, could rise anywhere, even among the stars. He had spoken. They had listened, and humanity had triumphed quietly but powerfully.